For over half a century, Canada has been a world leader in the production, use, and development of life-saving medical isotopes. The world is counting on Canada to expand this leadership role to support the diagnosis and treatment of cancer, ensuring medical equipment is safe for use, and to tackle some of our greatest challenges in health sciences. Welcome to the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council's Isotopes for Hope podcast with your host, James Scongack, Chair of the CNIC. In this series, we interview Canadian leaders who are making a difference every day. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Isotopes for Hope podcast.
I really want to thank everybody for taking the opportunity to join us today for our Isotopes for Hope podcast. And what's really unique about today's podcast is we are recording it from the Canadian Theranostics Leadership Summit here on University Avenue in Toronto at the Mars Discovery Centre. And this is a leadership summit between the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council, University Health Network, and the Canadian Medical Isotope ecosystem. And I'm very excited to have Rachel Sumner with us today for a talk on talent. And she serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Talent at Ontario Tech University. She leads their strategy and an exceptional team of people who are really focused on ensuring here in Canada we have the leading skills, intelligence, and human capabilities to really realize a lot of the potential that we're going to be talking about. She has a very extensive both academic and industry background, previously having served as Pearson's Regional Partnership Director, who led the development of their largest higher education digital learning initiative that was focused on workforce development. She has more degrees than I actually thought was possible. But most impressively, I shouldn't say most impressively, but very impressively, she's a 3-time nominee of the RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Award and is a certified executive coach and mentor. So I got to keep your number in mind, for some
you know where I am, James.
Some coaching and mentoring. And it's just done a lot of work in the sector, broadly in the economy, on really supporting women and career empowerment. And that's an area of talent that is frankly still under-tapped here in Canada as part of the talent discussion. So thanks, Rachel, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, James.
Really excited to talk about isotopes. And just before we do that, you are moderating a panel later today.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the panel?
Yeah, happy to do so. I mean, really my job is just to support a great conversation between 3 leaders in our sector who are bringing their perspectives around what we need to do to build that workforce capability and capacity for Canada to advance on all our goals and objectives. And so really hoping that we can bring to the audience that perspective from the sort of demand and supply side of our labour market and the realities here. And often, James, we're thinking about how to better align incentives between those sides of our labour market, and really hoping that comes through, because as I'm so encouraged by the words that keep coming up even this morning at the summit, it's all about collaboration. How do we work together to make this happen better, faster, smarter? And so, that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon.
Awesome. And obviously people are at the heart of all this. Oftentimes we talk about the opportunity here or the advancements in a technology context.
Mm-hmm.
But as I always like to say, technology is only effective with amazing people.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about Talent's mission and what you do in terms of, broadly in Canada, but particularly with isotopes?
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you. Our mission really is to equip business leaders like yourselves with skills intelligence so that they can make more cost-effective, more equitable decisions about workforce strategies. What we've come to learn in our work is that if we continue just to look at a job role as a unit of analysis, a lot of people are left out of the equation. And it limits the way we as businesses then can access the talent with the skills we need, because we go shopping for an X, and that X is that job title. Not everyone's going to perfectly fit that job title, but they may, for example, have 80% of the skills that are needed. So in our work, we want to break apart jobs and really dig into that skill and competency data to see whether there are ways in which we can create pathways and opportunities for Canadians to access all the great opportunities in the isotope industry that may be behind a barrier right now, that is simply a job title that just doesn't feel relevant to them. So that's just an example. And really excitingly, and I would be remiss if I didn't call it out, thrilled to say that today we're publishing with the CNIC, and we're so grateful for the partnership, our Skills for Isotopes report, which is the first high-level assessment of skills and competencies that are needed in the isotope industry, in the production and processing phases of our value chain. And so looking forward to hearing all the feedback from those that take the time to read it. More importantly, it's a call to action, quite honestly, for further collaboration to build the workforce we need.
And so just on that front, so
yeah.
and I would echo that. Thank you for your partnership with the report. I think this is not only a call to action, but I call it the starting gun of a lot of things we have to do. As you know, we have a vision in our Isotopes for Hope campaign of doubling our isotope production by 2030.
Right.
That only happens with people,
right,
and the capability. So can you talk a little bit about the report? And I know in your role you deal not only a lot with industry and academia, but a lot with from a public policy perspective. And here at the conference, we have a lot of support from the federal government, Government of Canada, Government of Ontario, municipal levels of government, regional levels of government, First Nations governments. I know there's some representatives here from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. What is your advice to policymakers?
Great question. Thank you for it, James.
And you only have 2 hours to answer.
Right.
Is it the short one, right?
Roll my sleeves up then. I think my advice would be to really work with us collectively, the collective that's led by organisations like the CNIC, the CNIE, to access the data that we're surfacing, because currently a lot of the labour market information that is driving policy decisions around investments in education and training is rearview mirror.
Right.
We're drawing on data that's, often best times 2 years old. Our economy is moving at such a pace that if we base our investments in education and training on data that's even 6 months old, we're behind the curve. And so we need to do better in terms of building predictive models around the workforce capacity and capabilities we need. So I see that really as the potential of that being public-private partnership. It's government and industry coming together with academia to say, what do we need to know in order to build these predictive models together that government can help fund so that we get the right education and training in front of the broadest workforce, prospective workforce possible, and also to upskill and reskill the existing workforce, which is, a commercial proposition as well. How do we, keep the highest level of skills, the most job-ready workforce in our industry in Canada? So I think, my key message to government is help us by supporting the way in which we're advancing this work to ensure we have the data, the insights to build these kind of predictive models so that we go beyond the anecdotal.
Right.
One of the things in the report that we're publishing today, James, which was not surprising because it's not just the isotope industry that is struggling with this, is only 28% of employers, of CNIC members that we surveyed in our work, have confidence in their workforce plan. That's less than a third of our industry actually know the skills and competencies, the workforce they're going to need. So you imagine then if that is the situation we're in, what that means for our academic institutions even, because they're investing in programming and upskilling opportunities, that whole spectrum of education and training based on very limited data. So there's that misalignment between demand and supply. We need to do better. We need to help our employers build better skills intelligence so that they can provide what our supply side providers, government, academia need to get that workforce ready.
So, that's fascinating. And I think also quite concerning because you could see a scenario here where the the talent, the people actually could become our limiting factor
Right.
in terms of realizing the
Right.
global need we have here. Just while we're talking about people, there's obviously an academic, a training component, like you've alluded to. But one of the things that I've often believed is a competitive advantage for us is a lot of the talent that we want to attract into this sector. Let's be honest, it's talent that could go and work in 10 other sectors.
Yes, exactly.
Because we have such talented people, but we know the workforce challenges broadly. I've always thought that the mission of medical isotopes, fighting cancer, diagnosing, treating cancer, is a really, I think it goes right to the heart, and it gives people purpose and meaning. How do you think that fits into the workforce development conversation?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think when we look at any of the research about the generations entering our workforce right now, they are very purpose and value driven. They're actually looking to solve problems. Isn't that what we're doing in the isotope industry? So I have to think that if we can package the story well enough for them, create confidence in them that there is a lifetime of meaningful employment for them, why would they choose to go anywhere else? And our post-secondary institutions, of course, have a role to play in positioning that to our students, but industry working with our post-secondary institutions is going to be so important, because the strongest signal that a young person and their family who may be influencing their decisions about what to do have is employment. So if we can sense the strongest signals from the industry that there is going to be meaningful employment, then that signal, can be passed on through our education and training system and through our families to young people, so that they won't, that they'll completely understand that investing in themselves, in education and training that places them, in the ideal candidate position for a role in the value chain. Quite honestly, James, it's a no-brainer.
Rachel, what I like about what you're talking about is oftentimes when we think about talent in Canada, sometimes we have a bias to move towards, here's what we have to do to defend our talent.
Right.
What you're really talking about is an offensive strategy of building the talent pool here in Canada. So we're actually drawing talent from other places here in Canada in this space. Can you talk about the importance of that?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I think that happens on a number of levels, quite honestly, James. Yes, we know how well Canada performs attracting international students compared to the G7. We're one of those destination countries for international students. Why wouldn't we go out there with a we choose you approach, our institutions, and go to the countries, who may actually be partners in the isotope supply chain or value chain internationally, and attract those individuals to Canada to access the kind of quality education and training we offer here? We'll retain some of them because we do particularly well in Canada at doing that as well. And some will return possibly home to strengthen the talent pool in those partner countries. We're building a global...
And we're exporting to those countries all of this capability. You're absolutely right.
So there's that piece. But I also think, given, our demographic time bomb that we're facing as well in Canada in the labour market, James, with the amount of retirees, the exit that we're expecting from our workforce, we don't have enough young'uns coming in to fill that gap. So we need to think about existing workforce. How do we reskill and upskill them to be great candidates for the industry as well? So it's taking some of those non-traditional approaches to doing that, following the example of other countries that are taking what is known as a skills-first approach to saying, with the minimum amount of reskilling and the minimum amount of investment, how can I make somebody a great candidate for our industry? And I have to think that will be true of Canadian newcomers too. I know when I landed 14 years ago, I described myself as British by birth and Canadian by choice. Having my credentials recognised, you're very kind of calling them out earlier, but, even coming from the UK, there's this unfortunate reality that the recognition of skill and competency when you transition between countries is an even greater barrier, let alone within the country's education and training system itself. So how do we remove some of those barriers for our highly skilled newcomers, present them with the case that the isotope industry is a great landing spot for them from an employment perspective, and then keep them, retain them?
I think you're right. There's both the removing the barrier piece that you talked about, but I often also look at it in terms of how does somebody feel when they come to Canada? If you have a designation from a respected post-secondary educational institution, any of the countries we talk about, the feeling someone has to go through to justify it,
Right.
is difficult.
Yes.
Because people are very proud of their achievements.
Right.
And so to me, that's also that kind of heart over head kind of discussion. You can have the right processes, but how do we make this a place that people feel good and that we welcome?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're based in Durham Region.
Well, it's an interesting question because we launched the business in November of 2020. And if you recall, James, there was not a lot of in-person anything back then apart from on a nuclear site. And so we launched the business as a remote working organisation, and we remain so. We have employees now right across the country. And in fact, we have employees now in the US as well, because you mentioned our work in Canada, but we are moving into North America, and then we'll be moving further afield in the next couple of years because of these global talent supply chains that we want to support the development of. And so a lot of the team, yes, are in Durham, and of course our affiliation with the university has us call that area home. But as an organisation, we remain remote.
But in terms of the geographic piece, and congratulations in being able to launch in
Thank you.
difficult environment, but obviously you've made huge strides in terms of the affiliation with Ontario Tech. I mean, just talk. That is an area, Durham Region in particular, very strong leadership, Ontario Power Generation,
right?
Darlington and Pickering. I know at Bruce we do a lot of work with Ontario Tech and OPG. Can you talk about your perspective? I mean, you come from the UK. You come to Ontario here, and you're, I know, virtual, but in the Durham region.
Yes, yeah.
What are your impressions of the region?
Ooh, I mean, 2020, as I mentioned, we launched the business. I've seen incredible evolution in 3.5 years now. I really wish Durham wasn't the best kept secret that it is. And I know there are many working in the region to change that. I've got to give, a big shout out to the team at Invest Durham, who are doing an incredible job to advance. I was recently there for the launch of, and I'm going to get it wrong, so forgive me, but the Eastern Network.
Central and Eastern Isotope.
Thank you, James. I knew you'd help me out there.
I just know because we have a Southwest one too.
Right.
We're friends, but we have a Southwest one.
Exactly. And again, that just shows such strong leadership between all of those members of the ecosystem, the isotope ecosystem on the East, who recognise that they can do more by coming together and collaborating. And I see Durham really starting to organise itself around that. And I was saying before, we started talking that, imagine then, we certainly have seen the power of consortium in our work. Solving our workforce challenges in Canada are not a single academic institution to a single industry employer solution. This is a many-to-many model. We need all hands on deck. We need all post-secondary institutions that have, value to offer to isotopes, and all employers connected to that value chain to come together. And in doing so, it actually reduces risk. We've seen that because of the challenges around workforce planning. Even large employers like our utilities, are looking at their workforce plans and thinking, how can we make a commitment to a number of, insert job title when the business is evolving so quickly? But if we can aggregate that data for the industry, you start to reduce risk for all the stakeholders, because while one organisation may not quite hit that same number across the industry, you're likely to. So those signals we're giving to our workforce, our prospective workforce, are going to be more accurate. And I think Durham's really starting to capitalise on that notion of coming together and looking at themselves for investment attraction, for actually the development of a workforce there. I think, if I'm not if I'm correct, not even maybe, they're definitely top 3 in terms of expecting the biggest growth in Canadian newcomers settling in that region. What an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I know through our discussions with Bruce Power and the Nuclear Innovation Institute, and Bruce in Grey Counties and Dave Shorey at Georgia, and that whole positioning of an area to be a talent magnet, James, I think that's genuinely exciting, particularly when you look at the relative cost of living.
Absolutely. I say Bruce County is the nicest place on earth to live 10 months of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
I grew up there and I still live there, but we maybe a little milder in the Durham region in December and January.
True. They do benefit from being that lake proximity. Yeah, they do.
One of the things I often say, Rachel, is Canada can be the Silicon Valley of isotopes. People think of
love that.
People think of now a much larger geographic area than Silicon Valley, but I think a unique geographic pairing. Final question.
I'm ready.
We're sitting here 10 years from now.
Okay.
We'll book it now because I'm sure we'll still be passionate and fighting the good fight 10 years from now. Where do you think we'll be in 10 years? What will be different here in Canada? We're talking a lot at the summit about the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's very exciting, very aspirational. Sometimes I think it's always good to start at the end point and work back.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too. I think we have such a comparative advantage as well as a competitive advantage as a nation around isotopes, James, that I think given the runway of 10 years, we have every opportunity. It's in our hands to seize that comparative advantage. I truly believe in 10 years, we could be leading the world in terms of preparing the workforce for the global isotope opportunity, meaning, as I mentioned earlier, our post-secondary institutions, our employers partnering to get together to develop that next generation of talent that we need here in Canada, but frankly, we need throughout that global supply chain, that global value chain. Let's be that destination. Let's put Canada on the map in that way. We have the infrastructure advantage with the amount of investment in nuclear production and processing here, but let's extend that advantage to that of our human capital too.
Absolutely.
And let's bring the world to Canada to get that education and training, to get that experiential learning in our organisations here. We'll grow Canada in doing so, but we'll grow the isotope opportunity globally. That's where I think we should be.
I love it.
10 years time. Can we make sure we bookmark that?
Bookmark it. We'll be right here in 10 years. I'm game for that.
Perfect.
Look, I want to thank you for doing this. I want to thank you for everything that you do as a leader, but your entire organization.
Thank you, Jay.
It's been a great conversation, and I really I think success, a key determinant of success for us is going to be to make sure that we focus on this people piece.
Yes.
It's going to be people that make the difference.
Yes.
And I always like to say we're not in a technical business, we're in a people business. So again, thanks very much for joining us. I want to thank the listeners who have participated in this. Call a spade a spade. One of the real reasons why we're doing this is to get this message out.
Right.
This is a great Canadian success story. It can be greater. We can make more of a difference. And so we always encourage anybody who's listening to share this on their social media. This is an important message to get out because without people understanding the opportunity, it's very tough to get people motivated to pursue it. Right. So thanks for helping spread that message and for joining us today.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, James.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council Isotopes for Hope podcast with James Scongack. Please share this podcast and follow us to stay in the loop. To learn more, please visit our website at canadianisotopes.ca.